Hey, Penn State people, Bob Flounders, Dave Jones. It's already getting interesting in Penn State's post-regular season. It is, as we record this, it's about 1:30 on Tuesday afternoon. We have a ton to talk about, Dave, and hopefully we can get to all of it. But let's just get started. Dave, as we record this, it sure looks like Brent Pry is on the verge and about to become Virginia Tech's next head coach. It's been reported by Pete Thamel that it is not a done deal, but close.
It is a done deal. It's done.
Okay.
I think we've been expecting this actually for a while now, haven't we?
And Dave, I think that
he could have taken other jobs that weren't of this quality. He could have taken other jobs from Group of Five schools. He chose to stick it out for this, and good for him. He's getting paid, and everyone's getting paid these days, man.
His patience has been rewarded. I know that, like you said, I would say there's been at least 3, maybe 4 chances, maybe for Brent to move on, and the offers are not nearly as good, obviously, or the jobs are not nearly as good as the Virginia Tech job. That job, I think, Dave, has been open for a few weeks now, and I have to think that, considering the relationship between Brent and James Franklin, that James probably knew something was in the works for a while.
Yeah, which is the next question everyone's going to ask is who's going to replace him.
Yeah.
So you would think it's not like Franklin is ever at a loss for guys in his Rolodex. He's always prepared. It's one of the things he does well as he reacts to these situations. For good or bad, he has a guy ready to load in. I will get to that in a minute, but just for the Virginia Tech pride of Virginia Tech, he has a background at Virginia Tech. He was a grad assistant back there and learned a lot of what he knows from Bud Foster, who's one of the great DCs of all time. But what do you think? I think Brent's a really good fit at Virginia Tech culturally. But I think some of the people down there in Blacksburg are there. It's been shown that they are not a top tier school the way they thought they were, or they wouldn't be getting a DC with no head coaching experience as their head coach. Even though they're a Power 5 program, they're not of the ilk that maybe they thought they were, and that's upsetting some people. So what do you think of? There's always a question of whether you make a guy with no head coaching experience your head coach at this level. I think they need to be a CEO, and I'm not sure. Brent was a quarterback in college or high school. I forget which. I guess high school.
I think he was from Altoona. He's from Altoona, I believe.
But he is a DC. He's a defensive specialist. You would agree with that. So it always gives me some pause. Whereas a guy like the perfect example of a head coach CEO is Bill Belichick, who whereas he is a defensive specialist, he had a broad range of knowledge of a whole organizational structure that he learned from the Tuna and a bunch of guys before he became a head coach. So that's my question to you. It's involved. Is Brent Pry a head coach?
Yeah, the Tuna is Bill Parcells. Just so for our younger listeners, I think a lot of people know who you meant when you said the Tuna, but Bill Parcells. I actually covered some of those teams, Dave, in my first full-time job, the Express Times in Easton. We actually covered a couple of those giant teams. I covered them in 88, 89, 90, and 91 and 92. So, Bill Belichick was a tremendous defensive coordinator, but he was definitely schooled well by Bill Parcells on how to manage a game, what goes into it, detail, all that stuff. A lot of his philosophy he got from Bill Parcells. But as far as Brent Pry goes, I'm glad that he's getting his shot, because you just don't know, how much was he under James's thumb? How much, latitude did he really have maybe on game day? I assume he had a ton of latitude. But James is just one of those guys you just don't know. I think he is just watching James be a CEO and what he goes through, I think will help Brent. I'll be curious to see what he does. You're right. He's a defensive guy. So who will be his offensive coordinator? That's one. And the other thing, Dave, is will he take some Penn State coaches or some former Penn State coaches with him to Virginia Tech?
Well, the first point is this. I think whenever a guy who's a decided specialist in his one discipline becomes a head coach, there's got to be a sea change in what they do and what they understand. They have to be an amateur psychologist more than anything with players. I mean, they're an emotional conduit for the team. They are the touchstone for all of these guys to get them ready to play. More than anything else, and getting the coaches revved up and ready to go out and recruit. I mean, the coaches are getting ready to go into this siege right now, which is what is it going to be until December 15th? I mean, it's incredible work. It is incredible, and it's most of the commitments are done, but it's still a 2-week window where it's just a lot of work, man. It's like a nonstop sales binge. If you were working on commission in a car dealership and you had to sell so many cars, so many widgets of any kind in a compressed, that takes a head coach who really gets his staff revved up. And if the staff is revved up at this time, which, James Franklin's done a great job at recruiting, that's part of it, is getting the staff revved up for that. So you get the players you need to compete. Can Brent Pry do that? I mean, it's a big leap. Steve Sarkisian hasn't been able to pull it off, and he's had 2 chances. Offensive specialist. Is it really about the fact that he doesn't understand defense very well? Probably not, really. I mean, you have to be an overall organizational guru, and all guys aren't cut out for that, especially when you've been devoting all your time to one side of the ball and granular stuff. All of a sudden you got to see a big picture. So I think it's something that a lot of ADs miss when they're picking guys. Like you said, you don't know how good Brent Pry is going to be at this until you see it. As for him taking assistants, it's all about who might be the DC on his staff. I don't think he's going to take anyone from the offensive staff. But who do you see maybe being good? Because if you get a DC job at a Power 5 now, you're talking about at Virginia Tech probably $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 as opposed to half that being a position coach. So it's a huge step up. And the important part is it's one step from being a head coach. And I'm just guessing, I haven't seen any figures from Brent at Virginia Tech, but you're probably thinking about $4 or $5 million now. Because everyone's making such crazy money that used to be thought of as crazy money, even on the Power 5 level, not anymore. So that's the kind of money upgrade that everyone's getting. So I don't know who you think they might steal that he might steal.
I just know that it's happened. I think it's happened before. I think when Joe Moorhead left for Mississippi State, I think he took Charles Huff with him. Yeah. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that Brent, maybe with James's blessing, would take a couple of guys if they're better opportunities that they currently have, maybe at Penn State. And the other thing, Dave, is Brent Pry may have a defensive coordinator in name, but his fingerprints, I would have to think, are going to be all over the Hokies defense. So it's going to be real important because I have a hard time thinking he won't be in the defensive meeting room quite a bit. And I think that he could very well just call the plays. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, I know he's got a lot to do on game day, but look at a guy like Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, who was the head coach. I'm pretty, I think he might just opt to do something along those lines too.
Well, would he take Poindexter with him?
Well, like I said, I think the key is now, James and Brent they go so far back. And I think that James played for maybe his dad at East Stroudsburg, or his dad was a coach at East Stroudsburg. So the history is there that, Dave, I don't think Brent's going to do anything that James doesn't sign off of. That's what I would tell you is I can't see him doing that. I think that there's a lot of respect there. I'm sure it's not going to be easy for James. He's been with him a long time, but I would imagine that if Brent's going to have some guys go with him from Penn State, I think what James would probably say, look, and to your point, you're right. He could take some Penn State guys if it's a better opportunity for the guy and his family. So you're right. If there's a defensive assistant that James isn't gonna, if he's got his guy as the DC, and one of the defensive coaches that Brent really likes is offered the DC job at Virginia Tech, James is going to say absolutely you can go.
Yeah, he said there's no question about it.
Sure,
you're doubling your salary. I mean, it's life-changing money at that point. I am curious. Now, you got somebody in mind as the replacement DC. Go ahead, as Woody would have said. Come ahead, Bob.
Yeah,
come ahead.
Yeah. So this is just the first guy that came to my mind, and these podcasts they can get outdated really quick. So that is the caveat that we are throwing out there at 1:44 on Tuesday afternoon. Who knows what James Franklin is thinking, but he has made no secret, Dave, that he is a world-class networker. He goes to these coaches' conventions. It's not unusual for him to visit or have dinner or lunch with a bunch of assistants that have caught his eye. I guarantee this has not caught him by surprise. You know that too. He's got his list. I'm sure there's multiple names on it. The guy that jumped out to me was Sean Spencer, who was his defensive line coach. He came with him from Vanderbilt. I thought he did a great job as the defensive line coach at Penn State. He has been away from Penn State now for a couple of years. He is now the New York Giants, I believe, defensive line coach. That is a guy that I thought was widely respected, not only as a position coach, but also as a recruiter. That is music to James's ears. He's already got contacts, where Penn State wants to go. He is a name that jumps out to me. I'm not sure how that would go, but I think he's ready now that he's had some NFL experience. He certainly knows the defensive side of the ball very well. He would be a guy that I think would be very high on James's list. I don't know if it's feasible, but I think it would be a good fit. And the other thing I would say is, the New York Giants have not exactly won a ton of games under Judge the last couple of years. So I would just wonder about a guy like Sean Spencer. I'm sure Penn State fans have a bunch of guys they'd like to see with the job. He's a guy that I would be on the lookout for, and it would not surprise me.
And the way things are working right now with the money in college sports, we're talking about Brian Kelly, a reported $10 million per over 10. Did you hear that with LSU?
Yes. It's John Gruden money, man.
Yeah, well, that's the point.
Yeah.
I think the tail's wagging the dog as far as what we used to think of the superiority of the NFL. Not only are college guys going to the NFL and succeeding as far as coaches, and all their ideas being taken and implemented in the NFL, but the college salaries are to the extent now where they're not only commensurate but surpassing NFL salaries. So because the NFL season lasts longer, I think a lot of times a guy like Spencer, he's got to prepare. You don't know, the season's not done yet. What have we played 10 games in the NFL? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's 11, or they're in their 11th or 12th week, but there's an extra game this year. You're right.
So Sean's got to be thinking about his future right now. The college jobs are open right now. He might be cut free in 4 weeks or something, or 5. Or 7. He can't wait that long.
Right.
If you're gonna prepare to take a job, and the money is terrific, you gotta prepare right now. So yeah. I mean, it's a different situation, especially with the early recruiting window, which is really the only recruiting window. Really the February thing is passé. I mean, there really is no February.
Right.
Exciting.
Those are leftovers. Or an unexpected. Something falls through with a kid or whatever. That's largely, you're right. I guess leftovers is a strong word, but the hay should be in the barn by mid-December. And I do think, like I said, Sean Spencer is just somebody that jumped out to me. I don't know, and he might not. It might not be an option. James might have somebody else he loves more. He might, to your point, Dave, he might like somebody a lot on his staff. I just, Poindexter impressed me this year. But, knowing James a little bit and how he's operated, I just wonder if spending 1 year with the guy at Penn State would be enough for him to even consider something like that. What about Terry Smith? He's been with James for a while. He coaches the corners. I don't know how James feels about Terry Smith. He's certainly been with him a long time. But I feel like we probably should mention him for sure. If it was going to be somebody on the staff, Dave, he would probably be my best guess just because of the longevity. He knows what James wants. He knows what James expects. He knows how to recruit. That would probably be the guy on the staff, but we'll see what James is going to do. And we'll see if James is going to be impacted by the fact that signing day is December 15th. Does he need to get it done before then? Or James is such a good recruiter, he might just assure everyone, hey, I got a guy in mind. I can't announce it now. Just trust me. You're not going to be sorry.
Well, the way guys flip now and the way coaches try to flip guys, I think sooner rather than later is the way to go. And considering how Franklin always has somebody ready, I wouldn't be surprised if we heard a name in the next couple of days.
So I just want to say, the Pry and Bob Shoup were co-coordinators in James's first season at Penn State. I think they had the same titles when James was at Vanderbilt for 3 years. So this is quite a long relationship. It's a long friendship, and I'm sure it's when Brent reached out to James, whenever it was, obviously it wasn't in the last 24, 48 hours. I'm sure it was a little bit tough, but I'll be interested to hear what James has to say. I'll be interested to hear what Brent Pry has to say when he takes the job, and I'm eager to see who he has for the next DC.
I think this has been expected for years, really. I mean, Brent Pry was the typical coaching nomad. All of his prior career, he never stayed anywhere more than 3-4 years tops, and he was hopscotched from one place to another until he joined Franklin at Vanderbilt. And he's been with the same guy now for 10 years. So that's a long time. And this one tenure at Penn State for 7 was 6 as a DC. Is that correct? As the singular DC.
Yeah, I think Bob Shoup left after the 15 season, if I'm not.
So 5 is the singular DC. That's a long time. That's a long time for him. And I remember you making noises about how you thought Pry would leave 2-3 years ago, because
I thought he had one foot out the door, I think, for one of these opportunities, and it just at the last minute, I think he just opted to stay. But I was surprised he stayed at Penn State as long as he did. I know the fan base has some strong feelings about Brent Pry's defenses as well, but I just think that for the consistency and exactly, I just think that he was probably very much underrated and I think underappreciated, I think, by some of the fans.
Some coaches just do that to themselves because they can't do. It gets back to the thing I said about James Franklin. They can't do what James Franklin can do. James Franklin, and I'll tell you another guy, is Yursich. No matter what you think of him, he projects that aura of a head coach. He clearly wants to be a head coach. To me, Brent Pry always looked like a DC. He acted like a DC. I'm sure he can transition. He's kind of got that, mountain man vibe to him, and he'll be great. He'll be a perfect fit in Blacksburg as far as culturally. Who knows whether he's going to win or not. Anyway, that's enough of that stuff.
Okay.
What we were getting into is really the salaries in college football. It gets back to what I was saying last year, where I told everybody, do not believe this sobbing and crying from athletic departments that we're going to have to cut program. Where is that all now? I mean, are you kidding me? They're making money hand over fist. They don't even need to worry about budgeting. The salaries are crazy. Mel Tucker, 95/10. James Franklin, 72/10. This is before bonuses, performance bonuses. Yes. And now Brian Kelly, who, the Notre Dame people thought he was their guy. He even has an Irish name, Kelly, and he looks like an Irishman, and he's their guy. Well, no, it's all about the money. It's all about the money all the time.
Run for hire.
To feed the ego of a guy who needs to get a natty. He wants to get a national championship. Can he get it at Notre Dame? No, ever. They were never winning. You agree with that, right? He was
Yes.
never winning a national championship at Notre Dame. I don't know that anyone ever will. You agree with that again?
Yeah. And I actually, you know what? I mean, I think he did a hell of a job at Notre Dame.
Yeah, he did a great job.
I think he is a brilliant offensive mind. And, I think he is a guy that at LSU, getting a different caliber of athlete, and Notre Dame fans won't believe that, but the guys that he's going to be able to get at LSU, I think this is a great hire for LSU, a great hire, and I think he can get a program going immediately.
All you need to know, all you need to know is Notre Dame hasn't won a national title since Lou Holtz 33 years ago, 1988, over West Virginia, and Major Harris and those guys tried to compete with him and they couldn't. Notre Dame had a different caliber of guy back then, and more important, you really we're only beginning to see the influx of Florida guys and Texas guys all over the country. That hadn't happened yet. And you certainly hadn't seen the dominance of Southern culture over college football. None of that had happened yet. Now, college football has almost become a regional sport, and the epicenter of recruiting in the entire country is not just the Gulf Coast, but Louisiana. If you had to, this isn't my opinion. This is statistical fact. There are more NFL players per capita from Louisiana than any other place. And all of a sudden, Brian Kelly, who is supposed to be this tactical genius, is going to get his hands on guys down there. I'm sure he's not a big recruiter. He never cared, but it's like assistants have always done all the recruiting at all these places anyway. He'll get assistants to do that. He'll get guys climbing over themselves like pet shop turtles to have those jobs under him, because they know that this is going to be a well-run organization, which it hasn't always been. All you need to know about Notre Dame vis-a-vis LSU, people crack me up when they say, well, I was just talking to somebody on Facebook who's a good dude and a smart guy, but he's a Notre Dame sicko. He really believes that, I don't see how he's closer to a national championship now than he was before. I was like, what are you talking about? What are you smoking, man? I mean, there's certain schools that the fans have an elevated opinion. We cover one from what they really are. And Notre Dame is certainly one of them. At LSU, you can get anybody into school. You have the like I said, the core, the hub of recruiting in the entire nation. Terrific players down there. You've had 3 national championships just in the new millennium down there. Two of them constructed by stone idiots. I mean, I'm sorry, but
and you're not talking about Nick Saban.
No, I'm not talking about Nick Saban. So
Les Miles and Eddie
Orgeron. I mean, it's really it's not complicated. So that's what he's doing. Yeah. He's gotten to a certain station in life. I don't know, what is Brian, like 58, something like that? What is he?
I don't even know. He might be even a little bit older than that.
Yeah. So he's gotten a station in life. Well, what is he left to accomplish? He needs to cash in seriously because it's out there. Why wouldn't you? And
I sure hope you never cross paths with Eddie O, Dave. He might like a word with you.
Well, come on. I mean, these guys are not geniuses. You don't need to be. That's what I'm telling you. Notre Dame people seem to have this image of what this game is. No, man, it's a big, dirty business, and you can get players down there that you can't get at Notre Dame or into school at Notre Dame. I mean, that's why they've won 3 national championships down there in the new millennium in the last 18 years. That's what it's about. And you could argue, I mean, think of the guys that coached before Les Miles. You remember before Saban. You remember some of those guys down there?
Yeah.
I mean, their problem was always that they had such bad coaching that they never got anywhere close to the national title for a while there. Now
Gary DiNardo?
Huh?
Jerry
Not
Denard?
Jerry. No, not Jerry. I mean,
Okay.
Jerry is a bright guy.
I just didn't want you to lump him in with those guys.
That's right. That was good. You saved me there. But there were other guys. I'm not going to get into it. Charlie McClendon, you remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah. They've always had talent down there. Now they've got a technician. So the problem is this with this Kelly hire. I don't think he's a cultural fit at all. And
he will be if he wins.
Yeah, I know, but Orgeron I always thought was a great hire because he fit. And that is more important than people realize. He fit there. He's an old Cajun. You can't understand half of what he's saying, but they know, they can understand. And that's the flip side of the coin. He was a great fit down there because I really wouldn't have ever gotten rid of him. I mean, he understands the area, and that's a lot of it. I lived through something in Columbus where they brought John Cooper up, who was, a Tennessee hillbilly, up into Columbus, and they immediately they weren't going to give him the benefit of the doubt for anything. You don't need the cultural fit when you're winning. When you're winning big, you don't need any of that. Everyone loves a winner. It's when you need a few games, a year or two to get over the hump. That's the problem. And Cooper never got the benefit of the doubt because people didn't like him. They would have loved him at Tennessee when he came out of Arizona State. If Tennessee had hired him out of Arizona State, it might have worked out completely different for him. But I just got a question about Brian Kelly in the Bayou. I don't know about that.
Dave, you teed me up perfectly. I'm glad you said what you just said. Talk about a guy that's a fit. Talk about an image. Am I crazy? Oh,
I know where you're
Bill
going.
O'Brien and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien and Notre Dame. Yeah. Is it possible? I think it might be.
Well, I don't know.
There were some ties with Billy O'Brien and Notre Dame before he came to Penn State, were there not? You told me about that.
I don't know if Notre Dame fans would want that, but maybe they should want that, because he's got that tight end kind of offense that's tough and rough and cold weather.
Yep.
That is a fit.
He's going to get endorsements from Nicky Saban and Bill Belichick. I'm telling you.
Yep.
I think he's a finalist for that job just based on everything we've just talked about.
And his name begins with O apostrophe, which that should be half of it, right?
I just think it makes too much sense. I mean, I think that he wants to be a head coach. He's gonna. I mean, it would be an interesting marriage for sure. But I mean, he worked some miracles at Penn State for a couple of years. And you just wonder if it might not be. Alabama is playing Georgia this week. If they hang close, they don't have to win. I just think that. Then again, if Georgia beats him 34-3, maybe it's time to think about somebody else.
Yeah. This will be the this will be the referendum on the last couple of that game is going to be the referendum on probably whether he gets that job. See, Lincoln Riley at USC, another perfect fit culturally. He's going to go out there. He's going to be doing his Ford Chapman up and down the sideline with his visor on. He's perfect there. It makes
nothing wrong with visors, Dave. There's nothing wrong with him. He is, and he's already poached OU's top 2 recruits. I think they're going to go to. They have already flipped to USC.
I guess we should probably talk about possible bowls for Penn State.
So why don't we just structure it so we're already at 30 minutes. So this is 3 things. Let's get to 3 things. They don't have to be long. Let's talk about bowls. Let's talk about championship weekend. And there was something else I wanted to ask you. Oh, not just generally, Dave, just generally, because we both have votes. The Heisman's coming up. This will be, I think, our last time to say anything before we submit our votes, and we're not allowed to reveal anything. No,
I'm not even going to get into it.
Okay.
I'm the Heisman rep.
I didn't want. I just wanted to throw it out there. That's why
it could be construed the wrong way, so I'm not even going to mention names.
I would say this though. I'm excited about championship weekend because when you're in the Penn State bubble, Dave, it's really hard to kind of scour the country. Like I have not seen. I'm excited to see this Georgia team play. And I'm excited to see that defense. I'm excited to see Saban try and come up with some kind of strategies to keep that game close or win it. But I'm really excited to see some really good players play this weekend because we do have Heisman votes.
And it starts with Oregon, Utah on Friday night, where another guy with Penn State ties is going to get a chance to show his wares. And if they put up 45 or something on a really tough Utah team, that'll get Joe Moorhead a shot, I think.
I think he's already been mentioned in connection with a MAC school already.
Correct. But I think he can do better than that if he makes a big splash.
I got it.
And then you've got Michigan, Iowa. Do you what do you
just
think about
bet the under? All you have to do, people, is bet the under. Do not take the side. Don't watch the game. Just check your phone for updates. And when it's 10-6 after 3 quarters, you can thank me later.
Yeah, well,
Michigan is flat. They're going to be flat. They have to be flat. And Iowa is going to do everything possible to shorten that game. They're just going to try to shorten the game.
How would you be if you're the OC at Iowa and you've got Spencer Petras at quarterback? What would you let him do?
Yeah, especially with Hutchinson and Ajobu coming.
Yeah, I know.
On the other side, it's just
if he hangs onto the ball for more than like half a second, bad things are going to happen.
Well, do you remember that the start of the Penn State game, and the fans might remember this, the first couple times he went back to pass and the play wasn't open right away, he threw the ball like 20 yards into the stands. Like he's been coached. Like count to 2.5, man. And if you're still holding the ball, throw it the hell away. I guarantee you're going to see that 3-step drop.
When people say that it can't happen, and I do not anticipate Iowa beating Michigan, even though they might be flat. When people say it can't happen,
I
always recall 2016 and how Harbaugh sphinctered up, and he's going to channel Bo in this thing. And he will give Iowa a chance to win the game unjustly. He will. that 14-13 game that we watched in the bar, and where were you? Indianapolis? Yeah.
The game they lost to Iowa?
Yeah, the 14-13 game in 2016.
That was the overtime game, right?
Michigan was number 2 in the nation. There is no way in hell they should have lost that game, but they did. That should have been Jim Harbaugh's first appearance in the college football playoff then. But it wasn't.
Yeah, I think there was a safety in that game that turned the tide for the Hawkeyes.
It was ridiculous. It was horrible.
What? I this is actually a backhanded compliment, and I know that it will not be received. That might be the worst 10-2 team I've ever seen in my life, and I mean that because
I said that. I wrote it.
It's kind of a compliment because they find ways to win, and you just want to pull your hair out. Like, how is this team doing it?
Yeah, and it keeps happening. Well,
now Iowa fans are probably very proud of their team, but I'm sorry, they're from 1 to 22 on the starter list. They just don't match up well with most teams.
They don't even have. The reason I asked you the question about top defenses in the league last week, part of it was I wanted to see if you would ever even mention Iowa, and you didn't.
No,
in your top
probably be 4.
They'd probably be 4. So with that offense and the 4th best defense in the league, they've done this. How? They keep doing it. I think it's partly an indictment of Big Ten quarterbacks. They're just
and Nebraska football. 19-0, a 19-0 run at Lincoln. Blow a 21-6 lead.
Did you see Dave Revson's stat on the 9 single-digit losses? No. This is remarkable, and it would take some guy like Dave Revson, who's a college football historian, besides being a great guy. Yeah. He came up with this, and because he researched it, he was very interested. The last time that's happened, 9 single-digit losses for a big school team, Division 1A or FBS is what it's called now. How long?
17-24? I don't think it's ever happened. I don't think it's ever happened. That's
probably what. We took over the airports. The Revolutionary War. We took over the airports. No, 1933. 1933. 85 years ago. 85 years ago. Yeah. It was leather helmets. Yeah.
That's
amazing. It's remarkable.
Are you going to watch that game, or are you going to not watch it? You're going to watch it because you want to see Sharpface.
Iowa, Michigan?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Why would you not watch it? It's fascinating in the same way that you've watched defensive battles, haven't you? Where with incompetent offense.
Remember the Michigan State Iowa game that got Michigan State into the tournament and they got waxed by Alabama? It was I think Michigan State won the game on like a 31 play drive that took like 18 minutes. It was just terrible.
It's brutal. It's
Yeah.
terrible. It's terrible. And what did we miss here? We
Well,
missed the
real
bowl.
quick, what do
The
you think
bowl.
on the bowl? Now remember, they're going to learn their fate on Sunday. Is it down to 2 or 3 places in your mind, or do you think you know where they're going?
I've gone back and forth with this. I had probably a half-hour conversation with Jerry Palm out walking Kaiser a night or two ago. And I went back and forth because we kept thinking of different aspects of it. The pecking order technically is Vegas 4th, Nashville 5th, New York City 6th. So that's Vegas, Las Vegas Bowl, Music City Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl. The problem is that Vegas, that's a 10:30 kick.
I do know that. I do know. Yeah.
So I don't think that's happened since the Holiday Bowl in '89 with the Penn State team.
Right.
That is really kind of off the map as far as something they would do. So there's the problem there. But Vegas would say all of those bowls would certainly want Penn State. Mm-hmm. Nashville, you've got the problem with Franklin he kind of had a messy history at the end of his tenure there. He did a great job.
Hasn't it been long enough though now, do you think?
No, but I maybe, but the local press, the local media will dredge all that stuff up. And it's not just the rape scandal. He left kind of on squirrely terms. He was talking like Nick Saban did with the Dolphins. I'm not leaving. And then he was out the door. I don't know if he'll be comfortable in that realm. So we could, after all this, end up in a crappy season. Him saying, "Look, we don't need to deal with the travel. No muss, no fuss." Maybe they end up in New York again. Because it's easy. Fans can get to it during the another COVID variant. Maybe they just all get together and decide, this might be the easiest way to just end the season and we can get back to recruiting and do all that. So I'm wavering. I was going to say, I said Vegas. I'm going to stick with that, but the time really has me worried. I just don't know if they would do that.
I don't think the world's ready for me and Greg Pickle to be in Las Vegas on a pseudo expense account.
Vegas is ready for you.
New Jersey, I can have just as much fun in a North Jersey bar. So I'm good with any choice. I'd prefer Nashville, but hey, you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. And I appreciate the opportunity to go to all the bars in North Carolina. Maybe meet some new people. I've heard Hoboken is lovely. So we'll see. Anyway, Blue White Breakdown Podcast. Forget everything we said because it's probably going to be outdated in 90 minutes. He's Dave Jones. I'm Bob Flounders. And we will talk to you guys soon.